Hi everyone, it's Laquita here. I wanted to share with you some things that I made for a swap that I'm doing with the lovely Mary Barratt. Hi Mary. And Mary and I are doing a swap of surprise items. So it's the first time I've ever done a surprise swap. So it's always been, something that we plan to exchange, things like that. So let me get started and show you what I have made for her. So the first thing I made was this little coin purse, and um, I didn't put the bag in the frame. I actually bought the coin purse already together, and I just had to alter it. So I done all the embroidery work there, and then I've added the gimp trim and the beads, and then all of the pretty dangles at the bottom. There's dangles and fabric dangles and bead dangles kind of mixed together there. And then on the back, there's this beautiful flower applique that I've added, and I've also trimmed the back of it with the gimp trim and the pearls. And I've covered the bag with this green velvet fabric. You could actually see it better on the edge there. So that's the little bag that I embroidered the front for her, and I'll put some pretty little goodies inside for her. And the next thing that I made was this little lavender sachet, and so I stitched together just like a little pillow, but it's stuffed with the lavender, and then just embellished one side. I've added that image there with just lots of different laces and trims and little flowers. And this applique piece here was gifted to me by Renita. I just love that piece. Thank you, Renita. And so that's the little lavender sachet that I made for her. And then the next thing I wanted to show you is, I know Mary loves teddy bears, and when I was out thrifting, I came across this little guy, and I just thought he was so cute. He looks like he's had a hard life, though. He looks like he needs a home. He needs somebody to love him, and I know how much Mary loves teddy bears, so I thought he could take a little trip and go visit Mary, and maybe she will let him live with her. So that's Teddy, and so I'm going to send him along with these other things. But I also made something to go along with Teddy, and I made this little tiny book, and I've stamped best friend on there. I made it from I ripped the cover off of an old book that I had, and used that for the outside. I actually saw one of Jeanette, My Cottage Crafts. Hi, Jeanette. I actually saw something that she made very similar to this in one of her older videos, and she had made a tiny little book and used this. The outside was made from an old book, so I scrap lifted that idea from you, Jeanette. I hope you don't mind. And so I've just created this tiny little book and embellished it with some cheesecloth and a little flower there. And it's about teddy bears, so inside you'll find images of different teddy bears. And so I've added a little poem here that says, "Let's be teddy bears in our next lifetime. Everybody loves them. Nobody cares if they're fat. And the older they get, the more they're worth." I thought that was such a cute little saying, so I've added that in the book. And then just a button, and as I mentioned, there'll be different images in the little book of different teddy bears. And this one I've labeled it Friends, and then I'll just put a little applique flower and leaf there. And then here I've labeled this one Huggable because he's hugging two tiny little teddy bears. And then I've added a little bit of lavender snippets there, and then the last page it says bear hug, because I thought this image, he looks like he really could use a hug. And then I put on the last page here, teddy bears don't need hearts as they are already stuffed with love. And then I've added a little heart embellishment, and then some dangling flowers and a little bit of dangling lace. So that little best friend book will go along with Teddy on its way to Mary. Excuse me. And then the next thing I made for her is I altered one of those paper mache boxes. And this box is about 5 inches across. And I've used a paper to cover the bottom. But then I used a satin fabric to cover the outside of the box. And then I've just trimmed it with a little bit of gimp trim, some bridal trim, and then embellished it with beads all the way around. And then on the top, I've completely covered it with different bridal appliques and or bridal pieces rather, and then I've used some applique flowers that have dangling beads, and then the knob here is one of those cabinet or drawer knobs that you can buy, at the craft store. And this one is a heavy one. It's actually made of glass. And the top of it, I've embellished it with a button. And then I've gone around the knob with 2 different sizes of pearls. And then around the edge, I've used an even larger pearl there. Now, the lid that came on this box was one of those lids, that completely goes over the edge. It has a lip, I guess you would say, that goes around the top edge of the box. It was maybe about an inch all the way around. Well, I cut that off because I didn't want the box to have that lip, and so I just cut it off and made it flat, and then I added a piece of chipboard here that I covered in the satin fabric, and that size, that round piece right there, fits right inside of the box and keeps it in place. So that's how I decided to do the lid. And so what's inside the box is a powder puff, and it's fluffy, so soft. It's made from a feather boa. And first I started with a satin pillow, and then I added another knob to it, and I've added a little bit of bling to the top of it. And then I stitched the feather boa onto that pillow. So I started at the bottom and just went around and around and around until I completely had it covered. I thought about gluing it, but then I kind of thought that I was just asking for a big mess by using glue, so I did hand stitch it on there. But I love the way it turned out. It is so full and so soft. And then the inside of the box, I love to finish the inside of my boxes with the fabric being loose like this. And it just, I think, makes for a pretty inside to your box when it's loose instead of it being flat. It could have been, I could have finished it off flat inside just like the outside, but I chose to do it that way. And anyway, by it being full on the inside, it gives the powder puff a nice snug fit. So I'm happy with the way that it turned out. So that's the powder puff and box that it goes in. Okay, and the next thing that I made for Mary, Mary has such a big, kind heart, and she's always sharing her bead talent with a lot of us crafters, and I know that I've been blessed with some of her beadwork, and I'm sure many of you have too, so you know what I'm talking about when I mention Mary's beadwork. I wanted to gift Mary something that was beaded, so I have done a little bit of beading like she does, but I don't claim to be as good as Mary. And Mary, so I hope you will overlook any mistakes that you might see. I'm sure it doesn't even begin to compare to your work, but this is what I decided to do for Mary as far as beading. So this image of the fairy here, I've beaded that, and then I've added all of the dangles on the bottom. And you've probably seen some of my books that I've done in the past where I put the beaded work on the front of it. And so I wanted to do one for Mary as well. So I've done this. The pattern actually, um, instead of the green, it was blue. So it was lavenders and blues instead of the green. And I know that Mary likes green and lavender together. So I changed out the blue beads for the greens. And then I've dyed the applique pieces that you see on here. And then I've put it all on this crushed velvet green fabric that I covered the outside of the book with. And then I've used a pretty green beaded trim across the top. And this pretty piece was a vintage clip-on earring. And then there's a little bit of lace around the bottom, which I've also dyed. So that's pretty much the outside of the book. Inside, as I mentioned, it is a fairy book. And so all of the laces and appliques that you see, I did dye them. This particular piece had little circles. Everywhere that you see the pink, there was a little circle there, and I filled those circles with French knots and beads. And then dyed the laces that are behind it and created that pocket. And in the pocket there is a little poem about the garden fairies. And I've added some fibers and a fairy charm on there. And then also you can see that the fabric that's used for the base of the book is very sparkly. And then on the opposite side there, you can see the image of the little fairy. And then this is one of those beaded pieces that I got from Donna Little. And then I've added just some other embellishments here, little flowers of different kinds. And so that pretty much completes that page. The next page has another image of a fairy. And I've gone around, excuse me, the page with these flowers here were part of a lace that was gifted to me by Shirley Wilson. Thank you, Shirley. And then the lace was gifted to me by Krista Gill. Thank you, Krista. And the other laces and applique pieces are just from my stash. I've added a few little pom-poms there. And then in this pocket, I've tucked in another little poem, and it's about believe in the fairies. And so that's it. It's a tiny little book, but I just wanted to gift Mary something that was beaded. So hopefully, Mary, you will enjoy having that piece. Okay, and the last thing I made for Mary was a pouch. And excuse me, this pouch is done in kind of, it's done in a crazy quilt style, where it's odd shapes of different fabrics put together. And then I have just blinged it out with lots of different laces and appliques and some embroidery work and an image of a beautiful lady there, some applique pieces, a vintage earring, and here's some of my work here, and also around this ribbon flower, there's a little bit of my work. I've added this gorgeous, gorgeous trim here that has these dangling hearts, and I have a little dragonfly in this corner and one of the little velvet flowers that I made there. And so that's pretty much the outside. I've also put that little rosebud trim across the top there. So if you lift the flap, and then there's another image of a lovely lady, and you can see a little bit more of my work. There's some bead work there, and some stem work, and some more French knots and flowers and things there. Now these flowers are like resin flowers, and they are very dimensional, and I've gone around them with French knots, and then I've made these two little velvet flowers there, and finished off the inside with a lace fabric, and it's a really deep pocket, and I've put my name inside, and I will fill it up with some goodies. On the back, it's covered with this stunning fabric, and it's done kind of like a tea dye fabric. It's has different shades of lavender and purple in it, and I bought it exactly as you see it, with all of the embroidery work and all of the beading on there. I just thought it was a stunning piece of fabric, and so that's what I use for the back. So those are the things that I'm going to be sending off to Mary, and so I guess that's it for now. So thank you all so much for watching, and take care. I'll talk to you later. Bye.